What's up, everybody? My name's Big Cam and welcome back to another 007 James Bond movie review. We did take off last Friday just because there was Wonder Man breakdowns coming out and stuff like that, but all the James Bond collection is now streaming on Netflix, and we are talking today about 1983's Octopussy. And this film is from director Glen, who was, I believe, a editor for the previous Bond films and stuff like On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Moonraker, The Spy Who Loved Me, and then he ends up into the director's chair for For Your Eyes Only, Octopussy, and then it looks like he does A View to Kill, still with Roger Moore after this in 85, and then he switches up his Bonds to Timothy Dalton in 87 for The Living Daylights, and then I believe Tony Dalton only has maybe 2, maybe 3, but he also has 1989's License to Kill with John Glen directing and Timothy Dalton starring as James Bond. And I think License to Kill is like a pretty big one, you know, like James, especially like for James Bond as like a character. James Bond, he's licensed to kill, you know, like, meaning he can kill people and not get arrested for murder. Well, he's a spy, you know, spies kill people, it's okay. We get it. We get the premise. But Octopussy here, I was not expecting this one to be as good as it is. And sure, it might be like the campiest of them all, but I had a great time. I was highly entertained. And like, this was the movie that Roger Moore really had his best outing as Bond for me. You know, like it seems like it's towards the end of his Bond run in either way. And he's like, you know, finally getting the character in like comfortable in the suit, in the tuxedo, if you would. And I really did think Roger Moore crushed it in this movie, and it was just funny that they like threw everything at him in this film. There was tigers, he had leeches on him, he's running through a swamp, there's crocs chasing after him, alligators, he had people on the back of elephants rushing through the brush to come and get him, and then what else animal did he have to deal with? Fucking octopussies. Oh god, man, I was dying when she was like hooking up with him, and like I think it was Kristina Wayborn maybe is the woman that I think he was hooking up with, and he like, you know, reaches around to her back and it looks like she's got a tattoo of a blue spotted octopus, which is, I believe, the most deadly octopus, and they're really tiny, but they're like super poisonous, and they touch you, you die. You're like fucking bad stuff. But she, you know, like, is hooking up with Bond, and he, like, goes up her back and goes, "Oh, what's this?" And she goes, "Oh, that's my little Octopussy." And then we cut to the intro song, I believe, unless that was after. But either way, I thought it was quite funny. And then there was, like, a couple of different women in this that were, like, Octopussy's 8 arms. And, like, Octopussy was the woman played by Maud Adams, which I do recognize that name. I don't know where from. Maybe she was in The Man with the Golden Gun, and she played Andra Anders, and now she's back as a Bond girl, but playing a different person. And then it looks like she's also the Bond girl in A View to Kill, and maybe Octopussy comes back. No, it says she's just the woman in the Fisherman's Wharf crowd, and she's uncredited for A View to Kill, but it says she's been in 3 Bond films. Interesting. I wonder if that in A View to Kill is supposed to be like Octopussy cameoing, or maybe the girl from the first movie, and you're just supposed to be like, oh, I recognize her in the background. But you know, so Octopussy is like the main woman, and she's got like other women that work for her, and she's like in charge of all these different women on this private island. No men are allowed, and the women are all badass fighters. And one of them, I think it was Kristina Wayborn, she like is wrapped up, she's got like a pink bikini on underneath, and then she's got like, you know, wrappings around her, you know, making up her dress, and then she ties it to the railing and goes, "Bye," and just kind of backflips off the balcony, and the, you know, the wrappings around her unwrap, and then she touches the ground as the unwrappings all come off, and then she's just standing there in like a pink bikini. I was like, not only was that highly impressive and cool, it was also sexy as fuck. I was like, Jesus Christ, what is this movie? 83? They were doing the damn thing. And it also had me in my mind going, when did Princess Leia put on that sexy bikini in space in front of Jabba the Hutt? I think that was 1983, so I wonder if that was something that like inspired these movies, where it was like, hey, you know, you can be doing these serious, you know, crazy sci-fi movies, but still, you gotta slip in a little bit of sexiness in there, you know, like, and Bond was like, hey, we have a ton of Bond women in all of these movies, but might as well have a bunch of women in bikinis kicking ass in this film. And, you know, maybe there's some people out there that are like, oh, this is implausible. Even the way that they were fighting, some of them had guns, and they're like pointing guns at the women, and the women just kind of go, yeah, and just like throw a little punch or a kick, and all of a sudden the guys are like, oh, you know, it's like, listen, these aren't super-powered women, but, you know, apparently they're trained, they're badass women nonetheless, and I don't care if it was campy or not, I was totally here for it. I was like, God, this is one of the most entertaining Bond films I've watched, certainly one of the most entertaining ones that Roger Moore did, and, like, it was campy, but it also had, like, a decent little villain with KAHN, and, like, you know, there was some stuff going on, but for the most part, you were just here for Octopussy and James Bond and the women in this movie, and you're like, oh my God, James. And like, James just seems to be, you know, running away, but like just kind of figuring it out as he goes this whole movie, and just adapting to his surroundings, and like, yeah, not the cleanest Bond movie, but certainly an entertaining one. I certainly had a good time, and overall I gave this film 4 out of 5 stars, about an 8 out of 10. If I had to give it a true 10 score, probably like an 8.2, 8.3. Maybe an 8.3 for 1983's Octopussy. And yeah, for as far as like the directing work from John Glen, I didn't think it was that bad. It had a couple of great shots in it. And yeah, the women, all the women extras, all of them. They literally got every sexy woman in Hollywood, and they were like, hey, come film this movie. And then they were like on like this like riverboat, and I think they were maybe in like Thailand or something. I don't know, but it was certainly interesting. And the little synopsis on Letterboxd for this, it says, James Bond's all-time high. James Bond is set to investigate after a fellow 00 agent, 009, dressed in a clown costume, gets killed. Fellow 00 agent is found dead with a priceless Indian Fabergé egg. Bond follows the mystery and uncovers a smuggling scandal and a Russian general who wants to provoke a new world war. Right, so they're going to set off a bomb. James Bond's got to defuse the bomb. He does it in the last second, saving everybody. Yeah, it was interesting. You know, the Russian guy, fuck him. You know, not Steven Burkov. You know, like, it was, every time they bring one of those, oh, nuclear war, it's the end of the world. That stuff I never really buy into in Roger Moore's Bond films. But, like, the gadgets, the women, just the charisma oozing off of him, the 80s styling, like, being Bond throughout the 80s is such a vibe for Roger Moore, and some of the 70s, but you know, most of the 60s and 70s belonged to Sean Connery, and it certainly shows. Like, I've said those in my earlier James Bond movie reviews. The Bond films are such time capsules for the decade they were in, you know? Like, Sean Connery's films feel so much like the 60s and early 70s, and then these films feel like the 80s, and they'll go through into the Timothy Dalton Bond era, and then by the time we get to Pierce Brosnan, that's like the 90s and early 2000s, and then you pick up with Daniel Craig from there. Like, oh man, like, I love a franchise, but I love that they keep reinventing it, and they're like, hey, yeah, we recast the main guy, but it's alright, we're gonna continue on this franchise that's been going since the 60s, and, you know, we're talking, what, a 60-year-old character now at this point, and I'm pretty sure the books came out even before the movies, so, like, we're a very old character at this point, and yet we're still in 2026. There's going to be an announcement probably this year on who the next James Bond will be, and Denis Villeneuve, the legendary director that he is, doing things like Blade Runner 2049. He did both of the Dune movies, and he's also doing Dune Part 3, so I cannot wait to see his work in Dune Part 3 and see how he closes out that franchise before he goes on to then do Bond, and who knows how many Bond films he will do. Maybe it will be one and done. Maybe he'll do the whole franchise, and he'll grab his guy, and then he'll do like 4 or 5 movies just like Daniel Craig did. But the Broccoli family, very smart to grab Denis Villeneuve and whoever they get for Bond. I think the rumors have been recently that it was Callum Turner was the front runner, but maybe Jacob Elordi is now the front runner, and I think Jacob Elordi's got a better look and better size than Callum Turner, but, you know, I don't know if a 6'6" big old guy can be a spy. You know, you gotta be able to sneak around a little bit, you know? I think 6 foot, 6'2" would probably be like the max height for him, maybe 6'4", but you can't be like 6'6" and like a big dude and be a spy. You know, I feel like you gotta be able to, like, do 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 do. You know, you gotta be able to like sneak around corners and shit. Gotta be able to stand on ledges that are like a little ledge, you know, like I don't know. Interesting. Who could it be? I think Tom Holland would be a great Bond, just because of his acrobatics and all of it all, and I don't know if his look necessarily nails James Bond or his voice, but I think his acrobatics would be the most entertaining for Bond. But he's Spider-Man, so you can't have both things. You can't be an overachiever. That's too much. You also have Zendaya, so, you know, he can't have Zendaya, Spider-Man, and Bond. You know, like, I guess a consolation prize, he got to be in The Odyssey with Christopher Nolan. Like, save some pussy for the rest of us, Tom Holland, please. Fucking Christ. He's such a beast. I can't wait to see more of Spider-Man Brand New Day. But please, if you guys have made it this far, think about supporting the channel. Drop a like on this video. Subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to send your thoughts to me about James Bond into my other social medias, links for those down in the description below. Who's your favorite James Bond? What's your favorite James Bond movie? I'd love to hear those things and have a conversation with you and talk more Bond. Drop a comment down below. And if you'd like to support the channel, the best way of doing that is liking this video, commenting below, subscribing if you haven't already, and hitting that bell so you don't miss future James Bond content and you get the notification when that comes out. And we'll definitely be talking the news when the new James Bond gets announced, and can't wait for that. But I will see you gorgeous folks in the next video. Peace.